I'm going to, for one of the very first times, read a few elements from our CETE bylaws, just because I think it might be helpful to hear. The name of the organization is technically the Florida Center for Theological Studies Incorporated, but the organization does business as the Contextually Engaged Theological Education Foundation of South Florida. We shall also do business as the CETE Foundation. The geographic scope of the foundation shall be South Florida, but without prejudice to any future decision of the board to extend that focus elsewhere within or beyond the United States of America. Our mission is that the foundation supports spiritual, theological, and ministerial formation that transforms communities. Our vision is that we are grounded in a practical theological approach, and we discern the signs of the times to strategically identify emerging leadership opportunities and to provide critical funding for innovative programs. Just real briefly, the foundation therefore will engage in those activities. Its officers, one of whom is with us this evening, thank you, Joe Iannone, a founding officer, will engage in those activities. Its officers shall so approve as consistent with its mission and vision. The foundation generally sponsors 2 annual gatherings that gather a community of supporters and honor leaders in contextually engaged theological education, including spiritual formation. And the foundation will collect, hold, and distribute funds so as to advance the purpose of the foundation in a manner that ensures full accountability. Having said that, I do want to point out briefly that CETE has been behind many, many things, including having support and guidance in the $7.3 million of grants that we've won through Palm Beach Atlantic since I've been there and have written those grants, and now for a $10 million grant that the endowment has allocated for us already, although we have to finalize certain aspects as of August 15th. And we trust that we'll move CETE forward all the more to be leading new initiatives in clinical pastoral education, pastoral formation, and a variety of other areas and ways to serve precisely in the mission you just heard. I'm now going to turn this over to the officer of CETE who is with us and is the founder of the CETE Virtual Network, or CVN, which is taking place this evening, and that is none other than Joe Iannone, who will briefly introduce and greet us and begin with a prayer.
Thanks, Brian. Before the prayer, I just want to add that this fall we'll be celebrating our 5th anniversary. So CETE's origin story started in the fall 5 years ago. And so with what Brian described, the energy comes from people like yourself, Florida Memorial University, where we have our MDiv, Palm Beach, where we have our PhD in practical theology. But more, it comes from the interaction of the people who are here tonight and others who are part of the network. And the second thing before the prayer, tonight you see here Sharon Joy Kleiss, who runs the Florida network. And the idea for the CETE Virtual Network and the process is what I experienced the last couple of years being part of Sharon Joy's Florida network. So thank you, Sharon Joy. Now, this prayer is an adaptation, if my eyesight can work here tonight, by William Cleary. The prayer goes like this. Strong evolutionary God, we bless you for this creative day. We bless you, Creator God, for all the novelty and varieties that surround us each moment with possibilities and hope. We bless you, Universal Creator God, for the life we have. We bless you for the energy and intelligence, especially the energies of love and inventiveness. We bless you for the future, for each self-reproducing molecule in our bodies that urgently create from generation to generation to the next. Interconnectedness for the design of future living things. Creator of the universe, we desire today to be instruments of this giftedness and of your special dream for the universe, for us. May it be so. And now we do a check-in that Brian will facilitate.
Absolutely. What a joy it is. Thank you for that prayer, Joe. A very beautiful way for us to begin the evening. I would like to thank all those of you who are with us that we can see, and for anyone else who might still wish to turn on their video, you're more than welcome to do so. In order that we can proceed with our initial introductions, we, as always, ask that you introduce yourself by your name and by your location, where you happen to be at the moment. Give us some sense of spatial location, and then simply what attracts you to this particular seminar. Just a few words, but we want to hear from everybody. Now, because we are almost entirely now on the screen, I am going to ask that we begin by seeing if we can call people on the screen with the very first person that I will start with. And after that, that person will call on someone else and so on, but right quick, because we want to simply hear name, location, and what really attracts you to this gathering. And I'm going to ask that we might begin with none other than Pat Duty. So I look so forward to you beginning. Thank you.
It's great to see you all. I am Pat Doty. I'm a Franciscan sister from Dubuque, Iowa, and I'm currently living in Alabama. And I just marked my mother's first death anniversary yesterday, so that's kind of what attracted me. And many griefs. We all have many griefs over the years, but that is the one that caught my attention, helped me, choose this as a program. Thank you. And I will call on my friend Mary Carter Warren.
I had the feeling. I'm Mary Carter Warren. I'm the mission leader at Holy Cross Hospital in Fort Lauderdale, part of Trinity Health. And I work, because in healthcare, I work with grief all the time. And I've had plenty of my own journey of grief over the last many years of my life. So excited to be here, Dale.
And who do you call on?
Oh, Fidelis. It's a way of getting revenge, Fidelis.
Thank you, Dr. Berry. She has already mentioned my name, Fidelis Uko. I live in Coral Gables. I am attracted to this gathering because of the lot I learned from it. I enjoy the conversations, the personal formation I derive from it, and the preparation for mission. Thank you.
And who do you call on?
So I call on Donald Kumbo.
Okay, thank you, Fidelis. Donald Combo. I am in Indianapolis with Franciscan Health. I recently, just in the last, in fact, yesterday, 2 days ago, was certified as a board-certified chaplain. And it was particularly gratifying because grief is what we work with. So I was particularly very interested in this conversation because I have my own grief, and I know I have met a lot of them on the course of my journey as a chaplain. So I was truly attracted to this group, and I thank all those organizers, all those who have put it together for doing this. I will now call on, let me see, who do I call on? Quickly, Clement.
Yes, I'm Clement Julian.
I'm so happy to be here this evening to meet my professor, Dr. Carter Warren. I've not seen her since I graduated. Brian, we were privileged to see a couple of times, and I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, I'm in San Diego, the Catholic Diocese of San Diego. I'm assigned as a chaplain at Scripps Hospital. And I deal with grief all the time. And my greatest challenge is what to say and what not to say. So moments like this provide that opportunity for me to learn, to learn what to say in certain situations and what not to say. So I believe this is going to be an enriching gathering. And I call Rachel Becker.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Baker Blackwell, and I'm talking to you from Boynton Beach, Florida. I received this email this invite to this particular topic, and I was saying, why am I getting this email? Where did this email come from? What is it that brought this email to me? And I'm newly elected senior warden to a church, an Episcopal church in Delray Beach. And I'm a social worker. So between the two, and being in the church, you do deal with grief. I have my own grief and I work with other people's grief. So, but I'm still wondering how I got the email. So I guess that's all God's plan, I guess. So I'm glad to be here this evening, and I look forward to hearing and participating. Oh, and I'm going to call on Rachel.
I had a feeling you'd call on me. My name is Rachel Rao, and I have a cold, so I'm sorry if I can't talk too much. But I have Pastor Young has been my pastor at St. Timothy Church for some time before, when he was our pastor for a few years. And during that time, also got to read, I got to attend his workshop on grief. And I've read his books on grief, which have been really helpful to me in my journey in having lost a very close friend and soulmate of mine, and still going through that right now. And I also, because I'm an active member of my own church, I know that there's people that have gone through a lot of loss in our congregation, and it's really helpful to know how to be with them and how to care for them in a way that they feel they accept it, and they don't feel offended, and they feel comforted. And Pastor Young has so much experience and so much to give, that every opportunity I can get to pick his brains, to learn from him, I will do so. So I really liked his book, the last one, the one, Road to Happiness, or Journey Through Grief to Happiness. I don't have the book with me right now, but I would recommend it to anybody who wants to understand what it means to go through grief. Thank you.
And who next?
Let's see. Sharon Joy.
Good evening. Thank you for your lovely checking in, getting to know you, see your faces, feel your presence. So I'm Sharon Joy Clyde, sitting here in St. Petersburg, Florida. And what attracted me this evening is that you are courageous enough to bring grief onto the stage and pull the curtains back. You know, it's taken us a long time to do that with the word love. And it's been such a benefit to all of us, bringing love into the mainstream. And we are a culture that's in grief and have been maybe for millennia. But until we face it, it won't heal. So that's why it's a gift to be here with you all to circle around grief this evening. Thank you for having me. And Dale, we look forward to your sharing your wisdom. Thank you.
And the next person
And
to
I'm
speak
calling on Helen.
Oh, it's good to be here. No, I couldn't miss this one, knowing that my friend Dale Young is going to be here and knowing how the good work he's been doing in this. And like he mentioned earlier, I used to bring him in to talk to my students in my faith community nursing classes. So I couldn't miss this one. I just jumped off another one just to be here. That's why it took a little while to show my face when I came on. Okay, so thank you, Dale, for inviting me, and good to be here with all of you. Thank you.
And who next?
Yeah, I thought everybody who's missing, who didn't
So
talk.
Hobbit would be, or Manuel, or Andrew, or Veronica.
Okay. Oh, I don't think Hubbard down in the bottom here said anything yet.
Thank you, Helen. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Of course, I'm going to join anything that CETE does for the most part, but particularly anything related to chaplaincy, since I am a chaplain. And it's interesting the spaces in which I move. It's not just traditional doing chaplaincy with people in a hospital, but a lot of grief is going on because of the culture and the community and the world in which I live, and being able to use these skills and have that knowledge, and mostly to be a good listener in spaces is very, very helpful. I don't have to lead with my opinion. I can listen to what others say with curiosity and openness, and maybe I can help to create some safe spaces for people where trust can be built. So I'm glad to be here tonight. I don't know what the focus is going to exactly be on, but I hope that we're going to look at communities as well as maybe individual things, but communities and how we can use and these skills to transform the spaces in which we move. So thank you for inviting me. And I would like to call on Veronica.
Hi. Well, I live in Weston, Florida. I work in a parish, and there's a lot of griefs in parishes. And also I work as a hospice volunteer for 2 years. And so I want to learn more on how to help people with grief. And I call Manuel.
Manuel, doctor.
Manuel, can you hear us? Can you turn it off mute?
Doctor Manuel, no se escucha.
Okay. Manuel, está bien. We can go, vamos pasar, we can go right ahead to maybe Veronica, with your permission, we'll hear from Andrew McCarthy, and then we'll hear from Shirley Brown, the Reverend Shirley Brown, and then we will hear from Miriam Elliott if she is available. I see that she is on not able to be present on video. Andrew, then Shirley, then Miriam.
Now, can you listen me?
Claro que sí, por favor.
Okay,
Manuel.
okay. My name is Manuel Ramirez, and I am a Peruvian, and I was trained at the University of Pennsylvania in internal medicine. It's been a pleasure to me to meet all of you, a community of philosophers that is going to answer me a contradictory question. Why is grief leading to happiness? This is a question that I like to hear from you. I've been working with Dale Young since 2005 at the Miami-Dade community, and it's been my pleasure to have a friend and my friend and my a pastor at the Baptist Hospital, and I've been working with him and in health fairs, in thousands of health fairs, in health education and spiritually healing. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Deeply grateful. So we look forward to hearing now from Andrew and from Reverend Shirley Brown after that. At the moment, I think that you can probably all see that Miriam Elliott has texted that she is from Gainesville, Florida. And so maybe we'll just need to stop at that point unless Miriam can speak. So first let's hear from Andrew, then let's hear from Reverend Shirley Brown.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Yeah, my name's Andrew. I graduated from Palm Beach Atlantic University back in 2023. I was very grateful and thankful to achieve a PhD. And shout out to Mary and Brian, my professors, who really were very helpful along the journey. Right now, I currently reside in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I just finished my third unit of CPE, and so I'm starting the fourth unit. And so one of the reasons I'm here tonight is, I would say in the last 9 months, one of the biggest lessons of my life is learning to listen, and the great dividends one can get from that. And then also, I'm interested in looking at grief from a liminal standpoint, because we have these phenomena of the waves of grief that come our way. They come into our lives and wash out. We don't always know when they're coming back. So yeah, I'm really interested in the storytelling aspect tonight, because I think that there's power and there's transformative power in story. And who's the next one on the list? Brian?
Our final speaker will be Reverend Shirley Brown. We can see that those of you who are looking online on the chat, we can see that Miriam Elliott posted something. So after Reverend Shirley Brown will conclude, and then I'll pick it up again.
Good evening, everyone. God bless you. My name is Reverend Brown, as it was announced. I'm working now at Jackson today. I'm actually shouting out from Jackson South, where I work as a staff chaplain for 7 years, and 14 years with Baptist Health South Florida, where I serve with Dr. Dale Young in the Congregational Health Program. So I received this invitation from him, and I was so happy to see it and see he's still the grief guru of South Florida. And I look forward to his presentation on tonight. And I'm so happy he was chosen to be the facilitator for this program. So I look forward to hearing him, and thank you for allowing me to share.
What a joy it is to hear all the introductions. It means something because we're all in it together. I now turn this over to Joe Iannone, who will then proceed by introducing our speaker, who will then begin with the evening presentation. Please, Joe.
All right, thank you. Thanks everyone for bringing your voice into the conversation. It's really a community of relationships. It's the context for what we're going to hear tonight. I think most of you on the invitation, saw Dale Young's background, his countless years of experience, not just with grief, but dealing with people in migrant situations, people at the periphery, people in Haiti going through difficult times. Has traveled all around the world, helping people on the periphery. And it's been my joy in the last month or so to become acquainted with Dale. And you have, as you know, those who know him, a very seasoned person of the gospel, and a very capable person to deal with the culture. So with that, Dale, I'm going to begin with a few conversational questions. But if you wanted to say something before I ask some questions to get the conversation going, you're welcome to do so.
Well, yes. Well, first of all, I am so grateful and thankful that you all have taken some time out of your lives to be here tonight. And share this time. I see a lot of familiar faces, and I'm honored and humbled to be here. So let's begin with the first question.
Yes, I think what's intriguing to me is the title. The title of the book, Navigating a Return to Happiness, a Roadway Through My Grief Journey. Why would that title capture for you what is in the body of the work?
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, first of all, the word navigating and the word return suggest that this has to do with a journey, right? There's some motion here. But let me first say that happiness is not a goal. It's an outcome. You can write that down. Happiness is not a goal. It's an outcome. The grief journey is filled with obstacles. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a character, the main character starts his journey, and here's the path that he has to take to get to the light in the back. But if you look very closely, you can see that before he even gets started on the journey, there are obstacles in the way, stumbling blocks. And some of these are, we're going to get to that in just a minute, but the grief journey is filled with obstacles and distractions and detours and very few road signs to give us the direction. And we can easily get lost in that grief. And it's a return. I have the word return because it's not a journey forward. It's a return to get back something that we lost. And that which we lost primarily is our joy. It's navigating, I should have entitled it, Navigating a Return to Joy. Because when we lose a loved one, when we accumulate our losses, that's the price. We lose our joy and we want to get it back. We want to return to that which we had. So grief is essentially a spiritual story. And having taken that journey myself, as many of you and all of you have, you know that by sharing your story and sharing stories of others, you can help in some way provide a roadmap. And so there's the word roadmap through my journey of grief. Some folks have asked me, why in the world would you choose such a depressing theme? Why would you want to focus your life on a theme like is so dark and so filled with gloom and despair? And I see it the other way. I see it as a ministry of liberation. It is a ministry that returns us to our sense of joy and happiness. So that explains the title. Next question.
You mentioned it's a journey, navigating forward, around, back, the journey. Are there some obstacles that are common to most of the grief journey that are kind of like signposts, or they pop up in similar grief experiences on that journey?
Yes, and we can start with denial. Because that's the first thing you say as soon as you get that word that somebody has died. You say, "Oh, I can't believe it," right? So that's pretty common. There's self-medication, whether it's alcohol or drugs or Telmonte's tranquilizers or whatever. That's an obstacle to doing your grief work. Misguided religious support. It's a little bit touchy one, but I have part of a chapter on that because as much as we in faith communities want to support people, sometimes our support backfires, and because of our inability to really connect with their experience, we lose them. They may never come back to church because of things that we have said or done while they're in grief. So misguided religious support is an obstacle. Distractions, entertainment, a family that says, let's go to Disney or let's go to the movies so that you don't think about your loss, and so you go to a happy place. Anger is an obstacle, especially if it's an anger at injustice, like the death of Trayvon Martin or George Floyd. You get so caught up in your anger, you don't do your grief work, right? Then there's ambiguous and complicated relationships. You may have had an argument with your father and told him to go to hell or something, or said, I hope you die. And then the next moment or the next day, you learn that the person that you hollered at died in a car accident. And then you have complicated feelings around that grief, right? So then there's also failed family support is also an obstacle. Trauma. We probably should do a whole webinar just on traumatic grief. And then there's isolation and lack of spiritual tools. In a sense, lack of vocabulary. How do we don't talk about grief because we don't have the vocabulary to do it, which is kind of a cultural thing. So those are some of the obstacles, and I address them in the book.
In the check-in, by the way, once we finish this brief conversation, we're going to go into triads where you'll be able to mine some of this with 2 other people, and then you'll be able to come back to Dale. But Dale, in the check-in, I think it was Hobbit probably mentioned community trauma or community grief. How does that factor into this journey of navigating, returning that you have described? Community grief, community trauma.
Good. I love that question because that's what we've been doing the last 20 years or so in our grief program. First, starting out of Baptist Health when we developed faith support, grief support groups in faith communities, and then when I was called to respond to natural disasters, I never. When I went to India, Sri Lanka, or Colombia, or Haiti, or Guatemala after the volcano eruption, or Colombia after the war, Chile after an earthquake, I would never go anywhere where I wasn't invited. And where was I invited? Was to faith communities. Now, you probably saw on the news when the earthquake hit Haiti, hundreds of organizations swarmed into Port-au-Prince, and you had TV cameras following all these different organizations that set up their tents and set up their programs and gave out their supplies and water and food and medical care, whatever. And eventually they shut down and went back home. But who stayed there? It was the faith community, the churches. The churches don't leave after a natural disaster. The churches are embedded in the community. They are community. They know the culture. They know the language. They know what death and dying is like and how it's handled in their culture. So community is a huge part of our approach to grief education. So when I would go to do workshops, I would not go in with the approach of American colonialism or Spanish colonialism or British colonialism in England or whatever, but rather go there to listen, go there to gather people from their community and facilitate a process where they dialogue and they organize their own grief support. Because when that's done, it is culturally appropriate grief support in faith community. That's important because our model of grief support, it's not just psychological, like Association of Death Education Counselors, like ADEC. It is a model that integrates spirituality in the grief story. So we only work with faith communities.
Okay, thank you. You say somewhere that your approach to grief support is connected to the exile story, the story of the exile. How does that factor into your approach different from other grief support?
Oh, well, okay, that's actually two questions. Okay.
All right.
But that's okay. First of all, let me say, for those of you who have studied grief, you know about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and the 5 stages of grief. We don't use it. We have a different model. We talk about many dimensions of grief, about grief manifestations, emotional, physical, behavioral, cultural, mental, and spiritual dimensions of grief. And it's not a stage theory. We talk about multi-faith. We don't talk about doctrine so much as we talk about the spiritual experience of grief. So for example, when I was in Sri Lanka, in the north of the country, after a war and after the tsunami, we had in the room in our workshop, we had Christians, Catholics, Hindus, Muslims, and Buddhists. And we all got along and we could all talk about our grief experience because we didn't talk about doctrine. We talked about the experience of grief. And the experience of grief, the losses that we experience, those are universal. So that becomes the focus. But anyway, let me describe three fundamental spiritual stories. First is the Exodus. And that's the story of slavery, oppression, and suffering in Egypt, and where the people of Israel escaped, went through 40 years of wilderness or desert experience, and moved toward the promised land. So it's a story that has movement from suffering through more suffering and on toward hope and promise. And that's a story that African Americans in the South and before the Civil War and after the Civil War, they identify with that story because that speaks to their experience. The second major fundamental story is the story of sin and grief, sin and guilt, and then confession, and then forgiveness. Now, I grew up Lutheran, and so we got that every Sunday morning. And if you're Catholic, the same thing. So we confess that we have sinned against God. I have sinned by thought, word, and deed, not only by outward transgressions, but also by inner thoughts, and so blah, 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 right? And so we ask for forgiveness. We get forgiveness, and then we're liberated from our sin and guilt. Okay, we get that all the time. Now, the problem with that story and grief is that it's not a grief story. It doesn't speak to the one who, to the mother who lost a child with cancer, because it's not her. Whose sin is it? Was it the child's sin that she got cancer? Should the mother feel guilty because her child has no? That's, in other words, it's a misplaced story if we try to apply the sin guilt and confession and forgiveness story and apply that to grief and loss. Now, I saw that a lot in after the tsunami. There were preachers who would say the reason the tsunami destroyed 500,000 houses and killed 30,000 people in one day is because you people are not going to church. You people are not praying enough. And that was God's punishment. You see, that language is from the sin, guilt, and forgiveness story. But that's not the grief story. That misses the point. Okay, so the third story is the exile story. And that story begins in Jerusalem, a happy place, a place of connection. The temple is the place of connection with God and the rituals there. And then Nebuchadnezzar comes, attacks, destroys the city. So there's loss. There's loss of place. And when thousands of Israelites are captured, kidnapped, taken to Babylon, where they are required to serve as slaves, they experience loss of culture, loss of spiritual connection, loss of their rituals that they had, loss of language, and loss of the ability to worship the God that they grew up with, and they're obligated to worship another God. So they are in a place of pain and suffering, and they long to return to their happy place, which is Jerusalem. So the exile story really is based on, one expression of it is Psalm 137, where the people of Israel in Babylon, in suffering, in the full experience of loss, they're taunted and tormented by their captors who say, "Sing to us a song from Zion." And they hang up their harps and they say, "How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land?" That's it.
Okay.
The exile, the grief story is an exile story because we've had our loss of our happy place, our most meaningful connections, loss of culture, loss of language, loss of spirituality, loss of ritual. We're in a foreign land. We're in a strange place, and that's what grief feels like. And those who are in hospice or in pastoral care or in nursing, that's the experience. It's an experience where people say, this experience is strange. It is uneasy. It is uncomfortable. It is something we never felt before. And we want to get back to, we want to return to our joy.
Okay.
And that's why the exile story is the grief story.
Okay. Thanks, Dale. I think this is a good moment, Brian and Dale, where we can go into.
Is going to ask one person from each group who might be acting as just a quick summary, each of the groups, to be speaking so you might hear what they've got to say, Dale. And then if you'd like to respond back a little bit to those five, then we'll open it up for a large conversation where everyone can join in back and forth. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yes.
Let's get underway. Let's hear from each one of the groups. Just make sure we hear from just one person per group right quick to give a little summary. Thank you. First one, please.
I can start. Oh.
Is somebody else talking? Oh,
go ahead, Hobbit. Oh, okay. I was just going to say, we all had different parts of what you spoke about, Dale, that were very much resonated with us. We talked about community. We talked about the obstacles. We talked about some things that we hadn't mentioned yet. One of those being anticipatory grief, that I believe it was Andrew that brought up that, and then the trauma piece too came up in our conversation. For me, it was the anticipatory piece was that my mom had dementia before she passed. So for many years, that was already beginning to happen. And then a medical mistake led to her death prematurely, perhaps. She was 87, but that one medical mistake kind of with her other complications brought that. So complicated grief was, I think, a theme in our conversation. Thank you.
Okay, well, let me respond just quickly, if I may.
Well, because of limited time, I don't mean to force you, but maybe we could hear just a few other folks right quick, because it just...
Okay, I'll take notes and then I'll respond later. Okay,
that'd be great. Just right quick to make sure we hear from all the groups right quick. That's all. And Hobbit, I think you were next.
Okay. I really didn't take notes. I'm just going to try to touch on. We had a robust conversation about the difference between community grief and individual grief. One member thought that there needed to be more of a distinction, even though that was touched on, more of a distinction, that the approaches might be very different. We talked about how do we encounter those who may have dementia, where we may not be using our words, and what other ways might we connect with them? Like, how do we process what's going on in the room? Could we do some things silently? Can we be a beacon of love and light in those situations and draw upon our skills? But mostly the idea of there are times when people they have an understanding of the finitude, the idea of death, that they're immortal, and they may deal better with grief situations than those that are trying to avoid the idea of their own mortality or others, that they have a more difficult time in processing grief. And the final thing I would say is, it was mentioned that, this thing that Dale is talking about talks about outcomes of the journey. Some of us feel like the process is important too, maybe not so much dwelling on the outcome. We don't even know what the outcome might be, but more making the process more qualitative, and would be interested in hearing some more about that if he has some time to talk about that. It was a very rich conversation. We really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and I think the others did too. Thank you.
Great. How about another group? Just one person from the other groups.
This is one of the things that came up with we discussed was the stages, as well as the other phases you mentioned now that they talk about, and we thought they both could fit in somewhere. Maybe we come up with something where we could combine them, because we think they could both fit in there, because we do go through those stages as well.
Thank you. Additional comments from other groups. Sharon Joy, if you could just turn off the mute.
Yes, I'll add one I didn't hear that I appreciate your feedback from the groups. That was most powerful. Was one about being disloyal to the one who's passed by returning to your happiness, to find joy again.
That's very helpful, Sharon Joy. Thank you. I know there's just one more group. We would like to just hear one person speak from that, and then Dale will give some comments, and then we'll open up for a large conversation.
Well, one thing I just wanted to share from our group is that towards the end, we talked about, the impact of how may it have been different for different age groups. Like, someone young versus someone teenage years or middle age, or someone older, like how we perceive and handle grief.
Thank you very much. I think that wraps up for hearing from all the different groups. If there's any other group that we've not yet heard from, Dale, I'm going to turn it back to you for some comments, and then we're going to open it up for everyone to join in and follow on as they choose.
Again, I'm really honored to be here and hear your feedback, and you touched on so many themes that you will be here till midnight. Anyway, anticipatory grief. That was a big one for me because, as I said in my small group, my grief experience began with the birth of my sister, who had a heart defect, a hole in the heart that was not, could not be corrected by surgery. And the doctor said she would live 1 year. And she lived 1 year. And the doctor said, well, that's a miracle. But she won't live more than 5. One day she's just going to drop and the heart will give out and she'll drop dead. So be ready. Well, so we lived those 5 years in anticipation that any day could be the day that she dies. And then, to make a long story short, she lived to 8 years. So I was living in a grieving family for 8 years as we waited. Could this be the day that she finally drops? Right. So I didn't have the term, I didn't have the language at that time, but that was, I now learned, is anticipatory grief. And you have that not just in the circumstance like my young sister, but also with Alzheimer's, with dementia, with cancer, with other, with AIDS and so forth. So yeah, anticipatory grief. Sometimes we do our grieving ahead of time. And you may have noticed situations where people are having such a hard time while the person is alive, and then at the funeral, they seem to be well, right? Well, they're relieved, right? They did they did a lot of their grieving ahead of time for years, and now death is a relief. And people wonder, well, how can they be so happy? Right? Right. So it's kind of a reversal there. We could probably, now changing the theme to trauma, we, in our grief program at Baptist Health, after the death of Trayvon Martin, and because we live in South Florida, a lot of people were showing up to our many grief support groups in different faith communities with their stories of loss of children due to violence, whether it was, in one case, a stabbing in a bathroom in Pinecrest that killed one of the boys, and the parents eventually ended up coming to our workshops and starting their own grief support group. People who had lost children due to violence started showing up in our groups. And our facilitators came to us and said, we're not sure how do we handle this, because this is not normal grief. This is not the grief of your grandma who died at 85 and we all expected it. This is traumatic, and especially traumatic if you heard a commotion outside and you ran outside and you saw the gunshot and you saw your loved one laying with blood coming out on the street and you call the ambulance. That's traumatic. That's trauma. And so we ended up designing a grief support training program for complicated grief due to violence. So really we need, Brian, we need to do another one just on trauma, right? So the idea of community grief versus individual grief. We see when we have mass shootings like at schools like at Parkland, the grief is not just individual, it's also community. And in those cases, ritual is extremely important. Giving people permission to mourn. We should talk about the difference between grief and mourning. Grieving is our individual work. It's our response from a loss. It's our response to a death, right? Mourning is the cultural expression of that. And so that's community already. You know, in some communities you wear black, in other communities you wear white, right? And in some communities you, I learned in Haiti, for example, that there was a evangelical pastor that came to one of our workshops, and he said on the anniversary of his mother's death, he went to the market, got some flowers, and was going to the cemetery to place flowers on his mother's grave to honor her memory. And he got as far as the gate, and he remembered that in the pulpit he preaches against honoring the dead, right? Against not honoring the dead, worshiping the dead, because the voodoo people do that. He didn't want anybody in his congregation to see him taking flowers to his mother's grave, and so he gave the flowers away to somebody else and left and went home. And he told that story in one of our grief workshops, right? So grief is not just an individual thing, it's also your community. What community are you in? What cultural context are you in?
Thanks, Gail. I'm going to need to jump in now because we need to hear from others who haven't spoken yet. So Dale, if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask that we might have others jump in, because we've got about half of you who have not yet spoken, and I know you've got some things to say, and I would love to hear you all discuss these things. Of course, we need to hear Dale speak, but we need to hear all of you speak. Just going to be quiet myself, and please urge you, jump in and say things.
I'll jump in. I wonder, you know, I haven't read the book, so I don't know how the argument gets developed, but I guess I'm wondering if you use the image of the exile, if so the return to joy, my experience and my research would say that it's never a return, it's always a new space, and it's a new joy, and it's a new way of integrating, but it's never a going back. And so the joy will be different. It might be deeper, it might be wider, it might be more gracious. And that the joy is a surprise, often after deep grief, that you hear yourself laugh and you're surprised that you can laugh again. But I don't think it's a return to anything in my experience. It's
Right.
really an entirely new space.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
Other comments? Anyone else to jump in and follow up real quick? I know we've got about 6 minutes left. We always promise to end on time. So I want to see if there might be other comments, if I might just stir the pot. Thank you so much, Mary. And Dale, we want to hear from you, but we want to hear from others.
Yeah, I just want to say something from an intercultural perspective. We know that context matters a lot here in the United States. We try to serve the people we are with. But in our own, from my own side of Africa, the other counts a lot in grief. The other. And I think that's an area we really need to explore. How is the grieving person accepting the person that is coming to hell? Because there are ways we push out those that want to help us. There are ways we try to do it just our own way that may not help the situation. So from my own cultural background, the other plays an important place in the grieving process and healing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's just follow up on that. Others follow up on what we've heard from Mary and from Fidelis. Additional thoughts?
Well, as a follow-up to what Dr. Warren said, you know, I was just sharing in our own small group about the book I read, It Is Okay That You Are Not Okay by Megan Devine. And she says nothing makes grief better. She says nothing makes it better. Well, listening to her is kind of a perspective of somebody that does not bring back God into the conversation. But I think grief, kind of agreeing with Dr. Warren, it can never be the same. It can never be the same, but something can maybe eventually make it better.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Clement. Much appreciated. Additional comments to share? We still have just a wee bit of time. It'd be great to hear from you, Shirley.
Hi, everyone. God bless you. You know, one of the things that Dale pointed out, I think was we were talking about obstacles of navigating grief, is anger and injustice. And I talked a little bit about my work that I currently do with parents who lost loved ones or children to murder. And it seems like their grief is inconsolable. It really is. It's like nothing makes grief better. They spend a lot of time in counseling, even in support groups. I've had people, I run a support group, take my support groups for 3 rounds, and they're still coming back. But it's hard to lose a child, especially you have hopes and dreams for them. They have a future, to see their future cut short. It creates a lot of complicated grief, traumatic grief, of course. And like I said, that person is inconsolable. So yeah, then grief really never gets better. They learn to live with loss, but it takes a very, very long time. And the anger and injustice comes from, you know, where the predators that killed the person because it was a violent loss. Often those cases are cold cases. There are no follow up, and so that person feel like, you know, no one is held responsible, accountable for that child's death. Sometimes the case don't get called for years, like in the Trayvon Martin and the what is that Jaime Goff case. Those cases were called years later, and so the family is just sitting there with their grief on hold and unable to move forward until, you know, they have some sort of resolution about the case. So we see that as anger and injustice and so forth to be a great obstacle. I believe Dale had another one. I forgot what it was. And failed family support. Because people are only going to support you for so long. But the ones with violent loss, there, you know, it's years and years of grief.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm turning now to see if there might be others with some final comments to offer before we move to our closing prayer. Of course, we would love to hear from Dale as well, but good to hear from all of you. Additional comments?
I'd just like to ask Dale if in his book or in his studies, if you've considered the different ways in which females might respond to grief in leadership positions or in the communities that you dealt with that were primarily matriarchal versus communities that were more patriarchal.
Oh, yeah, that's a lovely question. Thank you.
What a wonderful
you know,
question. We have just 1 minute left. I don't mean to be a pressure point on this, but Dale, if you could respond quickly, Joe will then need to move to the closing prayer. We'll conclude. One thing we always try to offer to people is to begin exactly on time and conclude exactly on time. Thank you very much, Dale.
Right. I was going to say that the majority of the people who have taken our workshops are women. Women are better listeners, are compassionate. They have a natural a sense of intuition and empathy, which is a gift for this kind of ministry. And everywhere I've been, whether it's in Sri Lanka or in Chile, Colombia, Haiti would probably be the exception. But in most of the places that I've done workshops, the majority of the participants have been women. And they certainly exemplify the gifts for leadership, empathy, compassion that's required in doing this work.
Thank you all. I would like to invite that Joe conclude with the concluding prayer. If anybody wants to post any comments in the chat, you're welcome to. Thank you very much, but we're now going to turn to Joe and then we'll conclude.
Great. First, I want to thank Dale for your presence and for your contributions tonight, for your history of service. Gail's books are also available on Amazon, so you could follow up with him and also with his books. And also thanks to all of you for participating here tonight. The community is always stronger, together. As far as the concluding prayer, I would like to ask somebody to offer their own spontaneous prayer for the group. Would someone please offer a concluding prayer?
Gracious and eternal God, we thank you for what our eyes have seen, our ears have heard, and our hearts have felt through this amazing presentation through Dr. Dale Young. Lord, help us to receive what he had to say, Lord God, and use it responsibly and well. Bless everyone that participated. Bless your presence on this line. Go with us now, Lord, as you dismiss this line, Lord God, and help us to continue to serve you, Lord God, in spirit and in truth, and be a blessing to those who are grieving, Lord God, to give them the support that they need. And Lord God, to remember how much you love us and appreciate us for the work we're doing in your name. These and all blessings we ask in your name and for your sake. Amen and amen.
Amen. Good night, and thank you, Brian. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening tonight.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Bye-bye.
I'm putting my information in the chat on how to get the books and also my email.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good
See you later,
night.
Brian. See you later, Mary.
Coming.
Bless y'all.
Good to see you.
I didn't see the email, but I guess
I
I
don't
can get
see
it to
it.
Brian.
Click
The email
on
didn't
chat.
come through.
It
Click on
didn't go
chat.
through.
It's all
Did
in
you
the
It did
push
chat.
go
send?
through.
Maybe he didn't send it.
Oh, I did. It's
It's not showing up.
No, it's
And
not
in the
showing
green
up.
chat, it says, find my books
Oh,
on
now it
Amazon and
did.
search
It
for
just
Dale
did.
Ellen Young.
But I
It
still
just
don't see it.
info.soulrefresh@gmail.com.
So where is it? I don't see it.
I don't see that
Info.
posted. Did you post that on chat?
Refresh.
Dale, I don't see that on chat yet. Have you clicked?
It's on the
Oh.
top of the chat, the top right, next to Mary's picture. There,
Okay.
you have to click on that and it comes up.
Mary's picture.
Is it there?
Well, her icon, his green icon is on the top of the chat box.
Oh, no.
You see it? That's where I found it. I had to click on it. I had to click
Anyway,
on it.
It's
Thank you,
info.
Dale.
It's info.soulrefresh@gmail.com. And if you want my book in Creole language, you have to contact St. John Lutheran Church in Miami Shores.
Are you local? Is that where you go to church? Or I wasn't quite clear. You mentioned South Florida a few times.
Oh, right. Well, I go to church in Coral Gables.
Okay, so you are local. You're a local person as opposed to
Yes.
Colorado or something.
Right. Yes. 38 years in the Miami area. I did my CPE at Jackson Memorial. I was a hospital chaplain 6 years at Children's Hospital, and then I went over to Baptist until I retired.
So, where did you get your credentialing? In which chaplaincy organization?
I did my CPE at Jackson Memorial, and my first CPE I did at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. So I have 5 units of CPE, and I was certified board certified chaplain with the Association of Professional Chaplains, APC.
Okay.
And I have a doctorate in ministry from South Florida Center for Theological Studies.
You're so lucky you were able to do it before they cut it off. I wasn't going in that direction too. I started out there, but then we merged into St. Thomas. Yeah, they couldn't keep afloat financially.
That's right.
So you must have met Mel Schoonover then at some point.
Yes. Oh, a long time ago. Yes. Right. Yes.
Fortunate man.
Bless his memory.
Dale, Chaplain Brown here. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Shirley. Shirley and I worked together for many, many years doing this ministry, and Shirley was very instrumental in recruiting our participants for all of these grief support groups over the years. And surely you would be delighted to know that Lichia Huben is right now sitting in O'Hare Airport to get on a plane, and she said she's going to try to sign on. So I think she tried but wasn't able to get on, but she was pendiente. She was sends her greetings.
Dale, we usually record these, so maybe she could watch the recording. If you contact Brian, he probably could send her the recording.
Thank you very much.
It will
Appreciate
be happening. I want to thank all of you and wish you a beautiful evening. Deeply appreciate it, Dale. Bye-bye. The outtakes will be available as
This
well.
could have been a
always.
couple of hours, you know, it was short. It felt like we could have done more. I would have loved more time.
We can spend hours and days on this. Deeply grateful.
No.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you,
I really
Dale.
appreciate it.
We'll talk. Okay.
Okay.
We'll catch up.
Nice to see you.
Okay,
Thank you,
good night.
Rachel.
Good
Nice to
night.
see you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. Good night.
Thank you.